Let's build.
Yeah.
None of mercy. King Hadith, some guy must be playing some counteraction. None of mercy. Why not a guy that's going to counteract his woman? None of mercy. I just gotta say, a guy start the war, and he's gonna end very far. None of mercy.
My name is Eve Darbooz, and this is the Pan-African product. And as the warlord, bounty killer, just said to you, we are going to talk about the Pan-African military. The Pan-African military is a key feature to the Pan-African state. Key feature. And it's been on people's mind because I even have a friend on X. I hate calling it X. On Twitter, I still call it Twitter as a boycott of Elon Musk's stupidity. And here I am calling people stupid. I didn't even have my mic on the last 2 episodes I recorded. Hopefully my mic is working now. But the Pan-African military is on top of mind because of what just happened in Venezuela, where another country can just walk into your country and take your president, where they could demand the removal of your president, right? A Pan-African military just can't be a military. It has to have a function. It has to have an overarching vision, right? Because a military must be educated. A military must have a central lying theme of how, not just how it functions, not just what its rankings are and what weapons we have. No, it has to be an overarching philosophy of what a Pan-African military is. It has to have, one, a vision, right? And that vision starts with the idea that the moment you create a Pan-African currency, right? Post-currency, the Pan-African state will need a security agreement. You can call it a security treaty. You can call it it's any of those, but there must be an agreement between the 54 nations of what and how a Pan-African, a continental military will function, right? We exist to protect the wealth of Africa. We exist because for the last 500 years, across the entire continent, others, outsiders, will walk into the continent and decide, you know what, we're gonna take millions of you and bring it to a far-off land and enslave those people, and you'll never see them again. Someone made a calculation in mind and decided that we would be those people. And guess what? Every African on the continent would qualify. We don't have to get into the whole colorism, paper bag test, any of it. The most white Africans, if you told a slaver, if you ended up on the shores of the United States, they would call you an octoroon and an octoroon, is that the way? I believe it's octoroon. They would call you an octoroon and slap shackles on you. They would literally do this. Not that there was a pipeline of North African slaves, but the French didn't treat you much better. Colonialism wasn't a much better, and if we had the strength, African strength, we could have repelled them. Going way back to when the Kushites had to fight the Romans. If the Kushites and the Egyptians had a better relationship, and the Egyptians and the Nubians had a better relationship, they could have beat back the Romans. The Kushites did. They sure did. We need a military that connects all of African legend, right? A Pan-African military must have meaning. And that meaning shouldn't come from an artificial place, not just because we say so. The meaning must come from all African warrior traditions. Shaka Zulu, you name one of the Moorish generals. Haile Selassie. Their legend should be the African identity itself. All throughout the continent, there are heroes, there are great battles, there are moments at which We beat them back as a part of the education of the African military. Anytime you bring in, before you get a gun, before you get a uniform, you must get an education. What are we fighting for? Why do we fight? We fight because what existed before is unacceptable. We fight because Africa is rich. As long as Africa is rich, there will be people who would want to exploit Africans, who would want to colonize and take the riches of Africa, not just the resources, not just the minerals in the ground and the oil, but the African people. Look at that France World Cup team. I do not want to question my African brothers' Frenchness, Francophonians. I don't want to question that. How you identify is how you identify. But listen to the people. You are a colonial possession, whether you believe it or not. Never truly French, but good enough to fight their wars in the sense of win their World Cups, bring pride to their children. Right? And what happens to the African children? The Cameroonians, the Senegalese, the Benin, right? I don't bring them up all the time because I love what they're doing and they're doing so well. But yeah, Niger, the Nigerian, Burkina Faso, Mali, right? The Pan-African military would have to understand they exist, right? And to protect African sovereignty. And that sovereignty of economics, and that sovereignty of society and social. The nerve of Westerners that come and lecture Africans about how their culture operates. You be what you want to be. I want to be a choice that all Africans can choose our form of society, our form of family and culture, and you get to run your capitalist experiment on your people. Let us live how we want to live, which the West would never do, which is why the military is so important. And it's so important that you get right. You get it wrong, then you have factions fighting each other, and you have tribalism in the military, which never works, greed that comes out of desperation. If a soldier is making $10 a month and someone offers them $10,000 a year, they're going to take that. They're going to switch sides. Not because they're bad people, but they have a family to feed, right? How can I say Africa is rich and not have the most right? When we're talking about compensation, we must have the most well-compensated military on earth. Not just because it's the right thing to do, but that is the glue of the military. What your service earns you. It could start with a condo and turn into a house. It could start with a uniform and turn into a legacy, right? This is why it is important that the Pan-African state has more than just the military. It has to have a vision, right? Who are we? The Americans are the eagle, right? The United Kingdom is the eagles. Oh no, they're the lions. I don't know why they're the lions. Lions are not indigenous to Great Britain, but they adopted it because of their aggression, because they plan on attack, because they on weaker, less capable countries, they eat them. If you want to be honest, the Pan-African state can't be like them. We're not like them. That's part of the reasons why we went through what we went through, is because we don't have the mind to do evil as a massive group. Yes, we can enslave you, but you have a pathway to not be a slave. To compare chattel slavery to slavery that happened on the continent. Now, Arab slavery is pretty vicious in its own right. But you can't be talking about inferior people, less evolved people, barbaric people, and their practices still happening today has to be a motivating factor to why we need this military and why this military has to be consider itself or have an avatar for itself. I know I like to use that word avatar, but a symbol is the right word. A symbol, which is the elephant. Why the elephant? Because the elephant has the features of the military that we want to be. We want to be large, right? Eagles don't pick elephants to eat as their prey. They pick rabbits as their prey. They pick small things that crawl on the ground as prey. They don't pick elephants. Lions typically don't. They might pick a weakened elephant, but they're not gonna just take a healthy, strong, proud elephant and attack it. And in times of desperation where they had to attack it, the elephant gives them the horns. We are a big, massive military. Large, right? Large like the elephant. And we do not attack. We don't have prey. We march along in our direction, and we march as a herd. We don't care what the bugs underneath or the eagles that fly above, what they do. But the Pan-African States military is the elephant. It tells you what our mission is, how we want to conduct ourselves. You want to have an idea of what your military is and what their duty is as a part of an overall system, as a part of an overall program, right? Your recruiting should start as children in high schools. You may not be able to start there, right? Veterans are going to have to come together and make this military. But the recruiting should be young people, and the recruiting should be prestigious. It should be coveted, right? Even though I don't like the term coveting or covet, it should be an honor to be chosen, not drafted, right? You can apply, but there'll be a test. There should be what we have ROTC in the United States. There should be something like that, where all the high schools have a military club, where the idea, the education that I'm talking about of what is a Pan-African military and what their duty is and what it means to be duty bound, what it means to become a warrior, right? Does a warrior mean that you're a psycho killer? No. A warrior is someone who guarantees the safety of everyone who lives in their community. We're not Pan-African because we want to be the strongest. We're Pan-African because we have to be. 500 years of history tells us, an ongoing, what happened in Venezuela should be telling us. The bombing in Nigeria should be telling us we need a military, right? We need a military. To be in that warrior society should be coveted. And that symbol of that military should explain your purpose. The eagle, the lion, the bear, it all tells you what they're thinking, what these nations, how these nations want to operate, right? Right. And the elephant should be on every patch, on every sleeve of everyone in the military to remind them we're not hunter-killers. We are the elephant. We go forward, and no one can tell us not to. Right? The Pan-African soldier, right, should covet this position. That's a key thing to understand. Right? Now, post that recruiting, this is important. You're not recruiting mostly brawny, strong guys. That's right. The Pan-African State warrior. The Pan-African State warrior is not just infantry. It's not just Navy. The new warfare is going to need engineers. The new warfare is going to need hackers for cyber warfare. The new warfare is going to need drone pilots. The new warfare will have 3D printed weapons. This is not just going to be just about brute strength. The warrior, the Pan-African State warrior class and warrior tradition will be those who think Caesar was a great general because he had engineering vision. He can just go place to place, just outsmarting people, right? That needs to be taught. Not this stuff that they learned at the American military school or whatever. That's why there's always coup d'etats that come. Like, you're not developing people for the purpose of protection and governance. You've actually trained these people to be ticking time bombs within the gates of your countries. And it's up to them to decide to be different, to be better, right? To be better than that programming, than that training. They know they had it. They know they had it, right? So the Pan-African soldier starts with education. A military must be educated. Trust me, that says education. Educated, right? It must have a security agreement on how it operates on the continent. Because without the security agreement, the currency doesn't mean anything. Without the vision of a military where Algerian, South African, right? You're seeing soldiers of various skin tones. They know they're going to kill you when they see a military that everybody looks alike. The United States sees that and goes, this is too easy. Not because it gives you any kind of tactical, but it's you and your cousins, really. What would terrify them is seeing an Egyptian soldier standing and marching in the same uniform as a Benin soldier, and a Ghana soldier marching next to a Kenyan soldier, and a South African soldier marching next to a Nigerian soldier. Could you imagine? How would they beat us then? Right? Think of it in terms of the World Cup, right? All these other bigger countries, they're putting teams together from 400, 500 million people plus, while we're all scattered and we're just, but imagine that team was the all-star team from the African Cup, right? If the African Cup produced a national team, right? But that national team would be the Pan-African state, and you'd have Victor Osimhen at the striker, and you'd have Hakimi at the left back, and it would just be bizarre to look at. Buemo on the wing. Like, how do you stop that team? How do you stop that team? That's the way I look at the military. How do you stop us if we come together? I'm going to be talking more about this. This video went longer than I wanted, but especially because I filmed a couple of long videos today. But the point I'm trying to make is this is a structure that its features, its compartments exist because of past military failures. And what have we learned from Traore and Ibrahim Traore and that gang? That we've learned that by giving the African warrior, their warriors, a mission, a clear mission that they operate in service of the people. You've seen a different type of group. Now, are there coup d'etat type guys in there? Yeah. Greed is a corrupting force. It changes people. It pits best friends, family members against each other, right? So if you're not fighting for anything, it's easily to subvert. But to teach every African, every member of the military, we don't just pay them a lot of money. We want to educate them as to what they fight for. And it's worth it. It's worth it. I believe that. I see guys going to apply to be a legionnaire, a foreign legion. We can give them a better option. We can. Obviously, you'd have to check out my other videos because I'll cut this here. But my name is Yves Darbouz, and this has been the Pan-African Product.